Hi, welcome to another episode of TakChek or PekChek.
I'm Weiren.
I'm Nicholas.
And together we are an education lifestyle podcast where each week we take a topic and then we discuss it. And at the end of the day, we decide whether or not it is interesting, which is
TakChek,
or frustrating, which is
PekChek.
Okay, so for today, right, understand that this particular week, most of the JC kids have already gotten their JAE results.
The postings,
so yeah, I hope that all of you got to where you want to go lah. So today we are specifically tunnel visioning on JC. So our last podcast we spoke about the differences between JC and Poly, but today we want to focus our conversation on JC alone. So I understand at this point in time, all you JC kids out there are having a lot of fun, going for orientation and making new friends. Okay, it's a very exciting time for you, but we cannot forget this one very, very important thing that will affect your uni applications, which is your subject combination this time round. So, Nicholas, maybe you can share with me, last time, right, in JC, what was your subject combi?
Alright, so I think we belong to the time before H2 and H1s.
Yes.
So in the past, we call them as A-level subjects, which is the equivalent of H2 now, and the OA level subjects, which is AO, which is the equivalent of the H1 subjects. So I belong to Bio, Chem, Math. That was my combination. So of which Bio, Chem, and Math are my A-level H2 subjects.
Okay.
Alright, and then I do have GP, and that's all.
Question, do you decide, because during our time, did you take triple science? Because there was the option for us to do triple science.
There was. I contemplated, but I think that it was a bit like of a suicide mission like that lah, to do
because you hated physics in O-levels.
I hated physics. So I think naturally itself, in the past, we will always relate to people who are going for, medicine course. They'll go for
then they'll do triple science, right?
Triple science. But I think with the advent of the H1, H2, triple science does not exist anymore.
Yeah, because I believe when they introduced H1, H2, they made it mandatory for at least one of the subjects to be a contrasting subject.
Yeah, a contrasting subject.
Meaning, if you're a science major, then you will be forced to take at least one humanity.
So talking about like
econs. Usually the science students will pick econs lah. Usually the science students will pick econs. So for myself, I actually took 4 H2s back when I was in Serangoon JC. Okay. So I did physics, chem, econs, math.
Physics, chem, econs, math.
Physics, chem, econs, math. But after a while, right, I really buay tahan chemistry. I hated chemistry in my life. So I ended up dropping. So last time, right, you can just drop the entire subject. Okay. There was no dropping to H1. Yeah,
no AO level.
No AO level chemistry. So I just dropped the entire subject wholesale because I really couldn't stand H2 chemistry or A-level chemistry at the time.
But if you were to compare the current H1, H2 to what we came from, so let's say mine was really just the bare bone 3 A-levels and GP as my AO subjects. But now the H1, H2 students, in empirically itself, they have to do 4 subjects, right? By itself.
Yes.
I'm excluding GP, project work and all and Chinese. But compared to in the past that there was a 3 subject combination and there's a 4 subject combination.
Yes.
Yeah. So would you feel like now the students, they are more pressed for time because they have like 4 subjects to study?
Actually, maybe because you must switch gears to think of that other additional subject, right? But I feel that last time, right, our 3 H2 subjects already, our 3 A-level subjects, is the equivalent of the 3 H2 and 1 H1 subject.
In terms of the content.
The content. So, for example, last time, I think your bio, you used to study way more, right? Because I believe when they switch over to H2, they cut quite a number of subjects. Same thing for physics and math lah. Yeah, so
there was also a huge discount when they shift over to the H2.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
But I believe that the main thing that really differs a lot for students nowadays is, I think some questions that listeners will ask is, does whatever subjects that I took in O level, have an inclination of what I can be offered in A level?
Yes.
Kind of subject. So, I think it's pretty kind of common sense that if you were to do like a science course like chem, bio, physics, like triple science or double science, then the relevant choices will appear in university. But what about niche subject that didn't really appear in O level, like econs and computing? Like what basis are A level, like JC institution using as a basis to assess whether can this student be eligible or not.
So there are two questions here, right? So if you didn't take the subject at O level,
can you take it?
Can you take it? And then for the completely brand new subject, like what
computing and econs.
Computing and econs, like what basis do they have to, or what is the training going to be like?
Yep.
So I just tell you a little bit of a secret. Last time, right, in my first 3 months, right, you know, first 3 months nobody is serious about studying.
Correct.
So you can do whatever subject that you want. I actually decided to try bio.
You tried?
Yeah, I went to go and try bio.
And you like it?
No, I hated it.
Oh, you hated it?
I hated it.
Okay.
I don't like to memorize things.
Okay.
I really hate to memorize things. But at the time I thought okay never mind, just try something new lor. So I actually went to go and try the H2 or A-level bio. And I hate it. I remember that the first topic was on cells, and then we were doing more like chemistry stuff and talking about water, and then how it's important for the cell and things like that. So I'm like, I can't be bothered. So I totally didn't study at all during my first 3 months.
But that first 3 months is sort of like a buffet spread, right? You can do whatever you want to,
you can do whatever you want. So now I think they don't allow this anymore. Okay. But I think as far as the subject is concerned, right, whether or not they allow you to take a particular subject will depend on the JC. So I have heard of cases of students, they didn't do bio before.
Okay.
Then they end up doing bio in JC. But it's a bit rare for students to come to this decision. But I think there are cases as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I do heard of cases like what you mentioned, and the school themselves actually only allowed a child to do bio, for example, only if they were to pass an aptitude test. And after passing, they will have to go for compulsory bridging courses. So unless I think the passion is really strong, or they really hated physics in secondary school, they want to change tangent and go to bio, then I think to be very honest here, I used to tell all my students that your O-level biology has little to no use for A-level biology. Like in terms of, because for O-level, you're studying in a very macro view, studying all the organs and all. But when you go over towards your JC A-level, all right, for biology, it's very micro. We're talking about DNA, talking about all the nitty-gritty, the cells, the lipids and proteins and all from there. So I will say that if it's going from non-O-level bio students towards an A-level bio students, I think that they are not missing out a lot. Okay, but having said that, what if you are not doing O-level physics and now you're going to take H2 physics? Will you encourage that kind of fit?
I personally feel that it is possible. Okay. Definitely it is possible. Because I always tell my students, right, the key indicator or what I feel is the key indicator for whether or not you will do well in physics is not really your O-level physics score,
Okay.
It's more of your A-math. Did you do well for your A-math? Yes, because your A-level physics is everything that you learn from O-level physics, but now we add in the math component. We are a little bit more mathematically rigorous. So where previously it was just like, if you go further, two charges, they go further, then the force is weaker. Now we actually calculate like by how much weaker.
We want a number.
Yeah, we want a number. So last time you say that, if let's say we have some current and we have a magnetic field, then use the left-hand rule to determine the direction of the force. Right, now actually we calculate the magnitude of like how big the force is.
So if let's say they did not take A-math, will they even be, so let's say I'm doing, I know that A-math is a very like pure science kind of thing in O level, but what if this student has combined science, all right, was just doing regular E-math, made it all the way to JC, can they still be offered physics?
Yeah. Okay, so if for no A-math cases, right, I actually have cases where they don't take A-math and then they end up doing, or they drop A-math in secondary school and then they end up doing H2 math, which is a huge challenge because H2 math presupposes a lot of things. Like they assume that your trigo is okay, your calculus is okay. And the same thing for physics actually. Physics is going to make the assumption that your trigonometry is okay, as well as your calculus, like your dy dx, your integration.
So A-math is critical for H2 math.
Yes, A-math is very, very critical for H2 math. If you did not do A-math, right, I would highly not recommend that you do H2 math because really half the topic is
Okay,
so
I mean, from here we can see that O-level bio, I mean, breaking it down, O-level bio, I mentioned, it has very little inclination on your ability to perform for H2 bio.
Yes.
but we do establish that A math is extremely mission critical for H2 math.
Yes, right. But I mean, I have heard success stories where the person used to take A math, then they drop, and then now after promos, they ended up with B.
Okay.
So this kid was under my care, but she really put in a lot of effort.
Okay.
To catch up on her old topics, and of course, because she was not, it's not like she didn't have A math knowledge at all. She used to take it when she was back in secondary school, but she dropped it.
Okay.
Yeah. So she does have some inclination.
Some of that basic. So you will say that O-level physics, whether you take or don't take, it doesn't really affect you in H2 physics because
it does. It will help.
Okay.
Because whatever we are learning now builds upon your O-level knowledge. Okay. It's just that now there's an additional math component. It's just that the O-level knowledge is very quick to pick up.
Okay.
The O-level basic understanding is pretty quick to pick up if you did not have H2 or O-level physics in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, if we have mentioned about bio, we mentioned about physics. So maybe here I will explain to the listeners with respect to chemistry. Okay. So chemistry, you dropped chemistry, right?
Yes, I hated it.
You hated chemistry, right? But you took chemistry in secondary school, combined chemistry?
Combined chemistry.
So I have students taking combined chemistry and students that are taking pure chemistry. When they started chemistry in JC, they said that whatever they have learned in O-level has just been thrown out of the window itself from there.
Yeah, I felt that way.
You felt that way?
I felt that way.
What was the topic that you, if you can recall the first 3 months, the first topic that they started with?
Okay, so mole concept was fine. My math is quite strong, so my mole concept is okay. Redox also is okay. But the one that really did me in, right, is the first few chapters really, atomic structure.
So SPDF.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my god. In secondary school, we just learned, first shell got 2 electrons, second shell got 8 electrons, third shell got 8 electrons. Then suddenly we go up to A level, and then I'm like, huh? How come got all these funny shapes? How come got circle one? Then how come got like infinity shape one? And I'm like, it was mind-boggling to me. So I'm not the kind that tries well if I don't understand what I'm doing. And in the case of chemistry, I don't know where it came from. It's not intuitive to me, so I totally dropped it.
I want to use this chance to maybe let the listeners know that if you are doing science course itself, all right, H2 chemistry is unavoidable. All right, it's unavoidable. There are cases that you can avoid H2 chemistry, which we'll talk about it later. It's something about this hybrid combination. All right, but H2 chemistry brings and builds on your O-level chemistry. In fact, I mean, for those that is going through your orientation, I mean, this will be the last thing on your head. When you finally select your course itself, the thing to know about that is that the first, I'll say, 6 chapters in O-level chem is almost exactly the same as the first 6 chapters for A-level chem. Exactly the same. But like what you have mentioned, it builds on what is done in O-level, but some chapters, they make it a little bit more complicated. You get more into the details, but this is the part that a lot of students are not being told and well aware of, is that H2 chemistry, in order to perform, you need mathematics. There's a mathematics component to it. Yes.
So to be honest, after I finished my uni already, I actually went back to A-level chemistry.
More palatable, right?
Yeah, I because when I studied physics, then eventually I realized that whatever you study in A-level chemistry actually came from the physics side. So I studied chemistry from the physics perspective instead. Then
it seems okay.
Yeah, when I came back to it, it was fine. I could accept it already. But then I realized that it actually got like solving quadratic equation.
Yes.
Got logarithms.
Yeah. Logarithm is the biggest thing.
Yeah, there's also a component of calculus actually, like the rate of change.
Yes. Yeah. So there is dy dx inside there.
Yes.
There is logarithm, and then there's non graphs as well.
Yes.
Yes. And all these are quite mission critical because marks are actually being awarded for it. Yeah. I think through the years of teaching H2 chemistry, one of the core topic that everyone tends to hate a lot is this thing called acid-base equilibrium.
Yes.
All right. So we are no longer interested in pH less than 7, pH more than 7, or neutral. For the listeners, which is acidic, basic or neutral. We want to know exactly how acidic you are, how basic it is, how neutral it is, and also to bring on using logarithm to determine how the pH actually changes according to temperature.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can't just say I got more acidic. You want an empirical number to talk about how many folds more acidic or less acidic.
Yes.
So I think H2 chemistry the first year, I think now we'll just go into break down each of the subjects. Then maybe we can talk about what are some of the problems of each of the subject. I think that for H2 chemistry, the first year, which is the physical chemistry portion, students are generally okay if their math is okay. Yes. Okay. So do you need to memorize for year 1 chemistry? I'll say by and far 30% memorization, but 70% is mostly on doing and application. All right, so students that usually do well in the first year usually have problem in the second year. You want to make a guess, second year, what's the theme in chemistry?
Organic, right?
It's organic chemistry.
Actually, for the first year, but I hear my H2 students, they complain to me, within the first year already, some schools already teach organic.
Organic chem usually will, 1 or 2 topics will be taught before promotion and examination, but very, very superficial. But once you go over the second year, if you're the kind that don't like to memorize stuff, all right, you will suffer for organic chemistry. All right, because organic chemistry is, I think, if I'm not wrong, we have a total of 20 to 24 different mechanisms with conditions and reagents of which but it have to be at your fingertips because you have nothing to grapple with.
Mechanisms meaning like the functional groups? Sorry, my organic
functional
chemistry.
group, yes, but more of like they are drawing arrows upon arrows to show how the electrons are being transferred within the compound itself. And the apex of organic chemistry is this thing called structural elucidation. Right?
Yes.
So they will give you a comprehension, all right? It's comprehension full of words and mechanisms, and they give you alphabet A to Z. You're supposed through that series of words, you infer the structure of A to Z. Yeah, so not only must you have all the mechanisms and condition reagents at your fingertips, you must have certain aptitude that can only come from practicing. Yeah, so coupled with the fact that in organic chemistry, all right, the last few chapters involve a few chapters from physical chemistry, they will dump it inside as well. So we talk about carboxylic acids, you have to talk about acids. So the acid-base equilibrium all come from there. So I think overall, I mean, even through years of teaching organic, H2 chemistry, I will still feel that it is a pretty difficult and daunting subject. Yeah, I think it's really difficult and daunting. And if you're doing a bio together with chemistry, that the first year of physical chemistry does have some linkage towards biology. All right, we're talking about biological molecules like proteins, lipids, and carbs. They are chemistry by themselves.
Yeah.
But I just don't know about for physics. If they're doing a PCME combination, a PC combination, the physics chem, is there any chapters that marry with each other? Like you learn this, it helps you in that kind of thing?
Okay, so from my knowledge, right, physics and chemistry, A-level physics and A-level chemistry, I don't think they're fairly separate chapters. I think at most there is some mention of certain concepts like mass spectrometry. For example, in A-level chemistry, you learn how to calculate like the relative molecular mass given a particular sample of gas or element. For physics, actually, we go into the experiment like how do we make a mass spectrometer. Right? And we also learn for H2 physics, we also learn some quantum physics where we learn about the atomic structures, the atomic structure and then the atomic energy levels. So for myself, I will try a little bit to tie into what the students know from the atomic structure in chemistry, linking it back to the SPDF structure for the electrons.
So year 1 for H2 Chem and year 2 for H2 Chem, are they like 2 separate big teams to it?
Physics, you mean?
For physics, H2 physics.
So physics for secondary school is always has been following the following themes, which is your mechanics, your waves, thermal, as well as electricity and magnetism. So we follow the same structure as secondary school, but again, everything is the same as secondary school. It's just that now there is calculation. And of course, there are some new chapters that are involved as well, like gravitation. For example, how do planets maintain their orbit around a sun or a satellite about the Earth, for example, as well as oscillations, and then other things that are new will be topics like superposition, like how waves will meet together and then they will cancel and then or reinforce each other in certain places.
But wave was briefly mentioned in O-level, right? Very briefly mentioned.
It was briefly mentioned, but it's mainly just basics. So now that you have the mathematical language already, when you go up to H2 physics, you have to learn how to add up the waves together. And then when you have two waves that add up together in a certain way. Sometimes they'll completely destroy each other, and how sometimes they will completely we say resonate lah, which is reinforce each other.
I see. So just for our listeners, you mentioned that trigo is required for H2 physics.
Yes.
I mean, the only trigo thing I know about physics is sin I over sin R for the.
No. Trigo is especially important to physics.
Okay. What chapters are we looking?
So we are looking at plenty of chapters actually. We are looking at mechanics. So previously, when we were doing mechanics of forces, right? Forces were mainly like one-dimensional. We have a box, then we pull the box to the right, or we pull the box to the left. Or even if it's a two-dimensional situation where maybe we have one force pulling up and one force pulling this way, we can use a vector diagram to go and somehow join the arrows to find the resultant force. But now for H2 physics, what is going to happen is that we're going to have to take this arrow and then split it into X component and a Y component.
Would that be a Z component?
No. We don't go so hardcore, not three dimensions. Right. So trigo is important for that. And we have to deal with oscillations and waves, of course, which deal with your sine and cosine as well. So you cannot discard your trigo. And essentially calculus also. Calculus is really ubiquitous, is everywhere in physics.
So differentiation, integrations is everywhere.
Yeah, actually for A-Math, the final chapter was kinematics.
Yeah.
One of the final chapters is kinematics. So kinematics, we will take that language of differentiation and integration and we will put it in physics. And it's everywhere in physics.
Okay.
Right?
So any chapters in physics for the listeners out there to think that if let's say I'm not a math person, is there any chapter that I can actually excel without being that good in mathematics for H2 physics?
Personally, quantum physics.
So it's a very understanding.
Yeah, it's a very understanding based. Okay, there is a little bit of math, but I think the math that is required of you is maybe like Sec 2. Sec 2 level math. So the quantum physics part is more, how do I put it? It's more written lah. It's more written.
So as a H2 physics tutor here, which chapter do you start to observe students having difficulty? Like from that onwards, it kind of like help you to sieve out the students who are generally going to be okay for the rest of H2 physics, or like they're going to start to have trouble already. Like which is the checkpoint chapter?
Actually, different students have different problems. I find that the first few topics of physics, I find is the hardest. The first few chapters, because we are talking about kinematics, forces, they are very mathematically sophisticated, and then they require you to have a very strong feeling and very strong intuition of the physical concepts, and the physical scenario that's at hand. So I personally feel that, and this is something that I use, I will tell my students a lot, use your feelings. Use your feelings. Right? So the first few chapters really is the hardest, but if you practice enough and you draw enough free body diagrams already, eventually you can sort of practice it out. But if the school tutor wants to be evil, they can always give you some fresh and new scenario to torture you. But after the first maybe 6 or 7 chapters, right, of physics, then the rest of physics becomes very studyable. So my H2 students, right, they always complain to me like, oh, Mr. Teo, physics is so much harder than chem, at least for J1. Then by the time J2, right, the story flips. The story flips. So this is something that I will always tell my students. Physics will only get better after like your first half of J1 at least.
So chem, myself, I think the earliest topic that we can detect whether a student is okay or not is actually chapter 4. The 4th chapter, you kind of know that they're okay or not, is where we have this thing called chemical bonding.
Yes.
So, I mean, for people that's listening out there, if we're talking about a compound like methane, CH4, usually the way we draw it, all right, for those that's watching the video, is just like a cross. You have a carbon in the middle with hydrogen top, bottom, left, and right in a very 90-degree angle. Right, but now they have to appreciate the fact that the bond pairs themselves, carbon and hydrogen, there are electrons
repelling each other.
Repelling each other. So the molecules will rearrange themselves into the most ideal kind of shape to make sure that they are minimizing any disruption to the structure.
The repulsion.
Yes, but not only must you know what shape that they arrange to, we have shapes that goes like trigonoplanar to ridiculous shape like octahedral, square planar and all. Alright, but you also have to memorize the bond angles.
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of people think that, okay, this is still very memory heavy, but there's an application. Because in terms of how they bend their bond pairs, it will affect the dipole moments, all right, the electron fields, which for O-level students, they will know that covalent is a chargeless compound. All right, but actually all the way up to A-level, depending on how the bonds are actually being arranged, you will generate a polarity. And then you will determine whether it's a polar or non-polar molecule. So that chapter is where students starts to don't like it because shapes are weird, angles are weird, and they know that if they do know that if these two things are not being mastered, they can't mention the polarity, the melting boiling point, solubility, all will get affected. And why this is so dire is because chemical bonding will be in the rest of every chapter already. Every chapter is all molecules. You have to be decent at chemical bonding itself. So that is the first checkpoint that most students usually have an issue. The next checkpoint that students will have an issue is this chapter known as acid-base equilibrium. That's where the logarithm portion comes in from there. Yeah. So I think these two things are usually quite a bummer, but if they make it safely through J1, all right, they are having decent understanding on that. Usually for organic chemistry, I'm happy to say like it's more of a memory thing. And just like what you mentioned about kinematics, the more you do, the feeling and everything from there, organic chemistry is very much like that.
What about bio? Is there any specific point where
students have a problem? Okay, so bio, the specificity comes a lot on the fact that the first 4 or 5 chapters, if I can recall the order, we have cells, we have biological molecules like proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, enzymes. These first 5, most O-level bio students, when they go up to H2 bio, they have no problem. All right, it's just like an expansion. You learn a bit more, fewer, nicer terms and all. But then the biggest portion, the biggest theme of A-level will be introduced after enzyme, which is genetics. All right, so that is the core theme for JC1. We have DNA, we have organization and control of DNA, then we have virus, we have bacteria. All right, and then this field itself is quite mission critical because if you are bad in understanding that, and O-level doesn't give you a lot of inclination on all these genetics. O-level, maybe the most was molecular genetics with touch and go. But when you go into A-level, these few topics, if let's say you are bad at it, it will affect your understanding because DNA will appear in every other chapter later. Yeah, so that is the first checkpoint. And I didn't mention this, but bio have math. You want to make a guess which?
Oh, it's the statistics part, right?
Very good. So biostatistics. All right. It's pretty decent. All right. They call it the chi-square test and the student t-test. All right. So there is still a mathematics component for that. But really bio, that's that only chapter. On the heredity, you have this mathematics expression over from there. But I'll say that once they head over to year 2, all right, things becomes relatively easier. Very, very much easier from there because the genetics, which is the biggest portion in J1, is repeatable over in JC2s. I personally, now I'm teaching JC biology, I personally dislike a few topics in J2 because I don't feel like it's very bio-relatable. I'm talking about things like climate change. Okay, so I feel that there is a certain degree of forcing climate change into a bio-related topic. So climate change in your view is like, greenhouse effect, you have a global warming, but they somehow wanted students to link it to like a dengue life cycle. So dengue thrive when it's hot. So how does the climate change? So we can't just say the dengue thrive, we have to talk about the genetics of how the dengue virus actually benefits from that. So that's one of the topics I really dislike. The other one is actually known as the chapter of, I don't know if physics have it, but for bio, they call it as experimental techniques.
Physics, we have something on measurements and uncertainty.
Measurement and uncertainty.
Yeah, measurements and uncertainty. So there is some coverage of this particular area.
So ours is more on, it's made popular after COVID came. You heard of PCR, right? So students have to learn exactly the method for PCR. Then there's how to test for proteins, how to test for different, Western, Southern blot. So that chapter, I feel like, it could have just been a lab chapter rather than be like a chapter itself. And the last one, which I'm personally not a big fan of it because it's more of like you say, I say, and history is written by winners, right? That particular chapter is called evolution. So it's very debatable because we talk about how things actually evolved to where it is today, and then there's conflicting theories, and it is the student's job using literacy skills to convince the examiner why their point of view is actually correct. So it feels like a literature kind of a
bit more of a philosophy rather than
a very bio-driven. Okay, so we cycle back to mathematics. H2 mathematics. How will you liken which point where they start that problem?
Okay, so for H2 mathematics, it's divided into two main parts, which is pure math as well as statistics, right? So for pure math, it's very much similar to what we learn in A math, right? But there are some chapters which students will always tend to have problems in. So there are some students with very poor visualization skills.
Okay.
They will tend to struggle in this topic called vectors.
Vectors, okay.
Now, vectors is covered in E math as well, but vectors, I feel that for A levels, is a lot more like a natural progression of this topic in A math called coordinate geometry. Now, it's also present in E math. Okay, but vectors is more of dealing with lines, dealing with planes now, and how you use algebra to solve for certain things like how two lines meet, or how a line meets a plane, or how do you find the perpendicular distance between a line and a plane, right? So some students with very poor visualization skills, they tend to struggle a lot in that particular chapter. Now, another chapter that I personally feel is quite intuitive to me, but some students just simply cannot see, right, is series and sequences.
Is that APGP?
Yes.
APGP,
So APGP is part of this. So APGP is fairly simple because it's just two standard kinds of sequences where you just know with very concrete formulas to help you. But later on, right, they actually cover summation. So when it comes to summation, some students for some reason, right, simply cannot see how the sum will lead to this particular outcome. So I feel that some students will tend to struggle in that chapter. But moving away from pure math, so the rest of pure math I feel is pretty cut and dry. You have your you have your calculus, which is your integration differentiation, but now it's basically the same as secondary school, but just that it's on steroids. The cases that they give you, right, are a lot more sophisticated and a lot more tedious, a lot more tough. But I think there is a little bit of extension where instead of using the integration to find area, they ask you to find volume. I don't know if you recall this from all the way back when. The volume of a revolution. So you take a function, then you rotate it around. Right.
That was our math C, right?
Yes.
Our math C.
We used to call it C math. So on top of that, we move over into statistics already.
That is a very year 2 kind of a thing already.
Yes. So one topic which I really absolutely hate, right, is permutation combination.
PNC.
PNC. Which some students love it, Usually I find that the more art students, right, the more they use logic.
More left brain.
They tend to do much better for PNC. So my wife, for example, she used to be a debater. So she loves the topic of PNC. And she can always get the answer correct. For myself, I can only get the answer now because
I've been doing,
I've been doing, and then I know all these techniques, how to use. But naturally, I suck at PNC. I'm absolutely terrible at PNC. So for all you listeners out there, what is PNC? And we used to have this topic in O levels actually. Right? They moved it up to A level exclusively. So this PNC is about, if let's say I have 10 people, how many different ways in which I can line up these 10 people in a specific manner? Or if I have 10 people, how many ways can I choose 4 of them to form a committee? Right? So very, very difficult topic. And it exercises mathematical muscle that the Singapore education system, at least in secondary school, doesn't really train. So it's more of logic and being thinking through whether or not your thought process, you've covered all grounds and all different scenarios.
So, I mean, what we will want the listeners to know is that we are not an arts expert in this scene over here. Right? But the general compendium to the science faculty is actually for them to have econs. Up their sleeve. I didn't take econs at all. You took econs from there?
I took econs at the A level. I personally enjoyed studying econs. I felt that it's something which is very relevant to daily life. And I like going to lecture, right? And reading my lecture notes and saying so if you raise interest rates, what will happen to the GDP and everything? So I personally enjoyed econs because once you study econs, right, you go and you open the newspaper, everything is there.
Yeah.
Everything is there. So nowadays, I think Trump is raising tariffs and slapping tariffs left, right, and center. So I can imagine as an econ student, you learn about, say, tariffs and taxes in general, and then after that you come to class, then you can see how it actually affects supply and demand of certain goods, how it affects your GDP and your imports and exports. And I think these are all very, very relevant. But I always fail my econs. I always fail my econs. So
okay,
econs in JC is a very heavy
writing. Yeah.
So for some reason, right, even though I love studying econs, right, I cannot give the examiner what they want.
Okay.
For some reason, I cannot give the examiner what they want. So I don't know if it's my interpretation of the question. Okay, maybe I should have sought out a proper econs tutor at the time. But I always failed my econs.
Okay.
The only time I passed was my A-levels.
Okay.
Which I got a B for, by the way. So it's an epic pass.
Wow, this is a super epic pass.
Yes, it's a super epic pass.
Okay.
So I was super duper happy.
Okay.
Right.
So I think we lead and job and history is not our alley. So
we won't talk about
we won't talk so much about it. But I feel generally for students, my advice here, like, I don't know, does it sing the same thing as you, is don't do 4H2. my advice lah. Advice. Because I think on the ways of how the A-level scores being tabulated, you will only use 3H2 for tabulation.
Yes.
So your 4th H2 is more of like okay, like you collect your laurels, you pin a star to you, say okay, like you survive the best way. But there's always the whole idea that if I do 4H2 and if I'm really bad, I can drop.
Yes.
You technically can, but there are lost time that's being made lah. Because I think in J1, if you spend time on 4H2s, you can't reverse the time once you drop to H1 to win, like, remedy the other 3 H2s itself from there.
So for subject wise, okay, before we leave, what is your tier list? So let's talk about the 4 science subjects, right? Physics, chem, bio, and math.
Are we going to tier it according to the ease of getting good score, or
let's talk about ease.
The ease of getting good score. My highest tier list
which is from easiest to the hardest.
So we are talking about physics, chem, math, econs lah.
Yes. Not econs. Bio.
Physics, chem, math, bio. I think the easiest to score well, I feel, is mathematics.
Really?
I feel. Okay. It's mathematics. Math is still a very grindable topic, right? You grind it out and
it's hard lah. I feel that math is hard.
But you did mention that there are only a few chapters that requires like a different way of analysis and all.
But it's still a difficult topic. But anyway, maybe you can.
Okay. My second to go to, I will feel, is physics.
Okay.
Yeah. Then followed by bio. Chem, undeniable, is the bottom of the rung lah. I feel chem is really difficult to do well.
Okay.
Yourself, your top.
So I personally feel that physics is the easiest.
Physics is the easiest.
Physics is the easiest of all the science subjects. Physics is undoubtedly the easiest.
Okay.
I think you have no visibility over H2 physics.
I don't have.
Yeah, but really, physics is the easiest.
Okay.
I think for a lot of students that want to go and do the doctor course, because they realize that actually bio that I learned in secondary school and bio that I learned in JC, right, not very relevant for my doctor course, right? They end up doing physics because it's simply easier to score.
You actually only need chemistry as a criteria to enter lah. That's the thing you need to know. Your second?
My second will be
math.
Actually, I have no idea visibility of what bio is like.
Okay.
So I don't know. But I will say that math and chemistry are tied for
the last place.
For hardest.
Wow. You will put math as a last place?
Yes. Math is difficult.
Okay.
Math is difficult.
Okay.
Or maybe chemistry is harder, but math I'll put as second place.
Okay. But bio itself, I feel that it's very much driven by passion for the subject. You need passion to stay afloat over there. And at the end of the day, if generally you're interested in the subject, I feel that it's no longer so much of a grind, but more of like, how you feel when you're doing econs.
Yes.
Like you go there, you're enjoying the process itself from there. Okay. I'm surprised that you will tie mathematics and chemistry.
Math is tough. Math is tough. Even some students, they ask me questions, and this can be a pure math question, right? That I have a reasonably high success rate.
You will still need some time.
I will still need a little bit of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay.
So I think for the listeners out there, like the general advice over here is don't do 4H2 unless you on steroids. Like, I think something that we'll not talk in the context of this particular podcast is H3 subjects.
Yes.
We won't talk about that. All right, and there's also the whole
weird
idea of
subjects,
the weird subject combinations like hybrid.
math, computing.
We have KI.
KI, yes.
Yes. All right. Just more of the common basic subjects for now. All right. But however, if you're interested to know about all these fringe subjects and how they can slot into your possible subject combination, let us know. Then maybe we can do a particular episode with respect to this. So, Viren, how do you feel like if you're a JC student right now, you're in the midst of orientation, will this particular podcast be frustrating or interesting to you?
Definitely, interesting. Because I at the very least, at least for myself, when I was deciding on what my subject combi was, I remember I did toy around with the bio, right? So if I had somebody to tell me that, hey, don't bother with bio, just physics is much easier, I think that would have been given me some direction, right? What about for you?
For me, I feel that, again, if I'm a student now in orientation, I'm playing around and everything, I'll feel that this is interesting or a TakChek topic for me. I think the same thing here is because they have no first 3 months.
To just try.
Yeah, right? There's no trying. There's no probation. If you don't like it, too bad. You're stuck to it. I think in very rare cases and under certain circumstances, maybe the schools will allow you to change your subject combination and all. But I think most of it is cast in stone once you get your particular combination out. I think here is to not so much as to help you all make wise choices. And Mr. Teo always says this to all his students, all right, which is if you are not dying in JC, you are doing JC wrongly. Yeah. So if you go to JC and every day you can go back and you can still play your Mobile Legend, or you can go and check your phone and scroll your socials and doom scroll yourself to sleep, then I think you are doing JC wrong. Or you might be just rather a genius itself from there. And JC, to my knowledge, I think Mr. Teo probably shared the same kind of experiences. It's probably the worst 2 years of our academic life. And I told all my students that always imagine yourself, you grind it out, you do, and get the score that you are happy and you are comfortable with, and then it's just you going into university. And I cannot assure you that you will definitely go to university, all right? But for those who will really go to university after that, I think life is really a piece of cake. You really enjoy. You can rest on your laurels. You are just enjoying the fruit of your labor. But I think for now, these next 2 years is really a grind fest. So when I was in JC, when I walked past all the benches, it's not about people sitting down and playing games and all. They're all chopping seats in the library and all the benches outside all the lecture halls just to study.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of consultations and all. And I think JC is the kind of thing that you do not want to have a very reactive response to it. Not trying to ply our tuition center and all, but you do not want to only seek help when you are having a lot of trouble. Yeah, because all these chapters, they have quite an aggravating factor for the next few chapters because they are being related from there. So enjoy your orientation, all right? Hopefully you get subject combinations that you so very much desire. And yeah, if you're interested in knowing about all the fringe top subjects like FMath, KI, you can let us know in the comments below. All right,
okay,
thank you.